There's a small bit of a needle there.
Now, come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to England, and now they're really roaring. And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
There is nowhere in this world quite like New York. And of course, it is a place that means so much to Irish people. Great tides of Irish immigrants have made it their home for several centuries now. They brought with them from the very beginning their games. In the 1780s, there are records of Irish people playing hurling and football in New York. It was in New York later, in 1891, that the Gaelic Athletic Association of America was founded. They had a pitch in Inwood called the Gaelic Field. The goals are still there on that pitch. Right beside it is a plaque which said that it is in this spot in 1626 that the Recacagwang Indians sold Manhattan Island to the Dutch. Later, in the 1920s, when there were 50 GAA clubs in New York, it opened Inishvale Park in the Bronx with a ballroom at one end of the pitch and Irish music drifting out into the evening air. Generation after generation of Irish people have remade Gaelic games in the city, and now still every Sunday, Gaelic Park in the Bronx is alive and familiar. But the games, as we know, are only part of the story and have only ever been part of the story in New York. And the success of the GAA in New York is a triumph of pride and commitment. And in that success, there was no night quite like last Saturday night. We will be talking later in this show about the New York victory. We will also talk about the way Roscommon dismantled Mayo, about Clare beating Cork, and much, much more, including two previews of huge GAA matches next weekend, Gaelic football matches in the Ulster Championship next weekend. You are very welcome to the Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse, and I'm joined today by the former Mayo footballer and manager, James Horan, by the former Cork footballer, Paddy Kelly, and by Maurice Brosnan of the Irish Examiner. Paddy, were you in Ennis?
I was, yeah. Made the long trip up yesterday. Going up, I had privately told a few people I thought we'd be caught. I thought it was a real 50-50 game, and up in Ennis, I just thought Clare had a lot of advantages going to that game psychologically, on top of the home advantage and all that. And look, it was a really, really tight game. It could have gone either way. I heard last night a comment that it was a 1-point hammering. It wasn't. While Clare were wasteful, they did deserve to win, but that game could have gone either way. But it's a huge setback for Cork. Very disappointing.
Why did they lose?
I feel they lost because they didn't go for it enough. I thought we got sucked into a very, very defensive game. The first half was as defensive a game as you will see anywhere in the country this spring or summer. And in the second half, when it was there to be won, Clare showed more battle. I thought they went for it. They attacked at pace. Their big players came into it massively. Keelan Sexton, Emma McMahon, Cleary up top. They kicked crucial scores. Cork just were too reliant on Stephen Sherlock. Sean Powder got a score from play. He was the only other forward who scored from play for Cork. So they were really, really reliant on Stephen Sherlock from play. He got 8 from play and 8 from frees and 2 from play. It's a huge setback for Cork. We now have I think it'll be 3 weeks before we know for certain whether in the Sam Maguire or Talton. And after a decent spring, a decent league, this is a massive blow to that development.
It feels like Cork belong in the Tailteann Cup.
I disagree, but the evidence of yesterday, I think you had two. I mean, Clare were very unlucky to be relegated. They were poor against Cork and Ennis in the league, and they were trounced up in Owenbeg, which is no shameful thing. Yeah. But other than that, they lost narrowly to Dublin, to Meath, to Kildare. That was always going to be a very difficult game. I don't care what happened during the league. Clare away, this Clare team are as good a Clare team as there has been, despite the recent terms of two of their greats, David Tubridy and Gary Brennan. Look, Cork are a C4 team in the Sam Maguire if they make it at all. That's the reality of where they're at. They're the lower end team. They're mid-division 2. It was just one of those games where Cork were flat. I mean, if you play Cork, you're aware that Ian Maguire, Rory Dean, Sean Powter, Matty Taylor, they want to run the ball through. Clare probably very sensibly just clogged up the middle. They've got everyone behind the ball, and Cork's running game had no way around it. I was disappointed with how they dealt with the blanket. I mean, the blanket is not new to anybody. I thought Cork were very pedestrian and very predictable on the ball. I was only thinking, like, what I watched Derry came to Cork there a few weeks ago, and geez, they piled loads into full forward line, and they sucked numbers wide and deep. Dublin against us in Parkheave as well, the same thing. They nearly had 13, 14 men inside our 45 when they attacked us, and it just meant that there was no sweepers, and just lads were pulling, creating space. Cork just played on the outside of the blanket. I suppose that was probably the approach 10 years ago when the blanket came in. You stayed on the outside and worked around it, but there was no penetration. There was a bit of a swirling wind in NSS as well, so it was tricky. Like Clare kicked a pile of wides, but Cork just, I feared going in that Clare needed to win this more than Cork. Clare absolutely needed to win it.
What a statement, though, Paddy. What a statement.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate, look, every championship game, once championship game or whatever, you're playing for Cork, you want to win for Cork. But I just was afraid that after Clare getting relegated, being beaten by Cork, being hammered by Cork up in Ennis during the league, and knowing they needed to win to have a chance of Sam Maguire, the talk in Cork was, there's no way we'll be caught. Too many results have to go against us, even if we lose. Whereas now the reality is, I think it's a distinct possibility. So, like, Cork were I thought played within themselves. And again, I don't think they went out to play very, very defensively, because they haven't in the league from what I saw. But it just became a real 50 men behind the ball either side, and it was very slow from a Cork point of view. And the second half, Clare really put a squeeze on Cork's kick out. They have a few huge men around the middle. Cork's kick out tactic is quite basic. They'll overload one side and just launch on top of the targets. But Clare mopped it up in the second half and drove forward, and Cork had no answer. It was really, really disappointing. I feel sorry for them, because it was gradually building the league. You're fourth place in the league, make Sam Maguire and attack a promotion next year, whereas this leaves us teetering now, and it is for a county of our size, to be flirting with the Tailteann, is a precarious position. And it's
for a county of Cork size, there were 3,500 people in Ennis yesterday.
Yeah. Look, I suppose there might have been more Cork people in Parkheave watching the hurling than there was travelled up to Ennis yesterday. Is the reality. Look, it's a long spin. It's a 2-hour drive on Easter Sunday. 2 hours from the city for me. So anyone travelling from further west, you're hitting 3 hours. So it is a long spin for a Munster quarter final. Look, Cork sport is traditionally quite low. There was a piece, like, it seems a small crowd, but in the stands it was very, very vociferous, especially towards the end. The Clare crowd were really, really baying for it. It was obvious that they had the momentum. Like with Cork, I would be very worried about Cork. They named Brian Hurley to start. I think he tore his quad on Friday, so Stephen Sherlock came in. But regardless of which one of them started, the talk was only one of them was going to start. And I think, again, you've Brian Hurley, Stephen Sherlock, Colin Manny, who's injured, and Conor Corbett, who's on the bench, who's going to be the young star, only starting one of them, albeit two injured. It was either they were holding one of them back because they needed to make sure they had a finisher to bring on, or else, to me, just suggested they were going to play a very defensive, workmanlike game. I thought there was too many of the same type of players floating around the middle and not really doing much. So look, it's well deserved from Clare. This, like, again, I would say similar to Mayo, Roscommon. I think people are over hyping how big a shock these games are. This, to me, was as close to 50-50 as there is. Cork could have edged it, but I think Clare deserved it. They kicked a pile of wides. They were the more impressive team. Cork have a lot of soul searching to do, because that was a chance to solidify their place as the second best team in Munster. Clare will take care of Limerick, I'd imagine, handy enough in 2 weeks, and then a chance of Kerry in the Munster final. But for Cork now, it's a long wait, and it's a huge psychological blow to us.
It's going to be actually great fun to listen to the Kerry people bigging up Clare for the next 3 weeks, and they try and talk that into a game. They might even wait until the Clare Limerick game before they do that.
They have to pick up Tipperary first too.
Tipperary, that's true.
Paul, Paddy?
James.
Just as you're saying there, I think it's a huge blow for Cork. They were building momentum, and they were building that sort of level of trust, and the crowd and the energy was starting to come back. What does this defeat mean? What's the vibe around the team like now after that result?
Yeah, I suppose, look, I was talking to a few people up there afterwards, and when I came home, ringing a few people last night, it's very deflating. Like John Cleary in charge, John would be someone we'd have wanted to be in charge for the last decade or so, and he's finally got the top job, and he is doing a good job. He's got good people around him. Kevin Walsh is, I suppose, a big name coming in from the outside. And you're looking at what Kevin Walsh is bringing tactically. I know he's down a bit more now. They do a lot of, I suppose he comes down a lot of weekends, and they do kind of, training days and stuff. Looking at Cork, I mean, they pushed, interestingly, I'd always say from Cork tactically can be a bit behind the curve. Yesterday they pushed 4 into the forward line, 4 into the half forward line for kickouts, Clare kickouts, and it really put a bit of pressure on Clare until midway through the second half. Clare pinged a few over the top of Cork, got 2 points, and I saw from the sideline instruction was drop off, and then Cork just dropped off. It's like they got caught out and they just backed off, and invited Clare, and Clare began to dominate. Look, this is a huge defeat for Cork. If we could get lucky and still make it into Sam Maguire, but I said after the league, I was very, very happy with the league. I thought we were very consistent. Cork, people would often say about Cork is we're Jekyll and Hyde. I thought Cork's league campaign was very, very steady. Lost narrowly to Dublin, drew with Derry. Fairly consistent performances bar the Meath, the last 3 minutes of the Meath game, the first game of the season. So I thought we were really tipping along nicely. I thought just get over the line here against Clare yesterday would have been a huge, huge win. But look, the championship is all about performing, and Cork just didn't get enough. I just pinpoint one thing. I thought Sean Powder again was centre forward. And in those games, I looked to Mayo teams with Lee Keegan and Paddy Durkin, from the half back line, your better, stronger players conceded, play develop, and then attack. I was watching Powder, and he was just being tagged the whole time in that cluster of bodies. He got 1 point from play, but other than that, very little impact.
Lillis took him, didn't he? And just stayed at him.
Yeah, in the first half, straight away he dropped off, and it allowed centre back to drop off and to sweep. Again, it's one of those things in the modern game. It's just so crowded on that D or on that 45. That's where Powder was. Every time he got a ball, any half break he had, he was just swarmed again. The same for Roy Dean, same for Ian Maguire. Bar the first half, Ian Maguire won a few frees, ploughing forward. Cork had just nothing. They had no variation to the game. There was no kick passing inside. As I said, again, it was a 1 point game. It wasn't as if Cork were terrible. I do have to say the first half was one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. It was, I know from watching TV that the Mayo Roscommon game wasn't technical either, but at least conditions there were somewhat played a part. It's becoming a theme, like in the stand yesterday, you have open conversation with people without having to worry about, are you keeping an eye on the game for 20, 30 seconds at a time, because the ball is just, for the moment, I do genuinely believe that the state of football is, when teams play that way, it is becoming, and I consider myself obsessed with football and love the tactical stuff and all the different styles, but it is putrid to watch, and I do have a serious concern where the thing is going if games are allowed to develop like that. But anyway, the second half was brilliant. The second half was your traditional all action, and Clare came out and grabbed it and got a deserved 1 point win.
I went back through my notes for the last 11 or 12 weeks, James, and one of the things that you said in the first week was how highly you rated Clare and how highly you rated their approach. And you've consistently made that point on this show. And at no point, it's not that you're saying that they haven't got credit. It's just pure admiration for how they go about things and how they try to win. And I thought Colm Collins' interviews, a brilliant interview with Owen Cormack before, and I thought it was a brilliant. I thought he set out the stall perfectly. Number one, yes, this is the most important game in my time as manager. Number two, well, what happens if we don't? We're going to really try and win it, but if we don't win it, yes, we'll embrace the Tailteann Cup and we'll try and win that if we're in it. And I thought he got it absolutely right. So he didn't hide from the short term, but he understood there was a more medium term.
Yeah, and look, he's I think it's 10 seasons. Is it Colm's involved now as manager? I think everything about him is makes him a top level manager. His composure, the way he speaks, the respect he has for players, and I've dealt with him down through the years, as I said, in many challenge matches and set up, and just the way he goes about things and the type of guy he is. Sets him up, and I suppose sets up that respect level that he has, I suppose, with the players and probably the wider GA community in Clare. But look, first things first, Clare have a lot of really good players.
Yeah, they do.
So let's forget that. And I know we talked a lot about Cork there, but you know, you saw yesterday Cleary, Malone, Cooney, McMahon. You see these guys, and they can really play. You know, Sexton yesterday. Some of the points he got were crazy. You know, so they're a very good team. But what I really like about them is I suppose the character that they always show. And you know, if you're going into a fight, or there's going to be a battle, or there's a sort of a must win, you know, Clare going in there, you know what you're going to get from them, as regards, you know, the fundamentals of high performance, their effort, their commitment, their courage. They go for that, and they always show that. So you mix that up with the sprinkling of good players and the team ethic that they have, and they're going to be a matchup. But you go back to, and Paddy alluded to, you go back to the league, and the relegation absolutely cut them to the bone, you know. And they had great performances in that, and still got relegated. And obviously the defeats to Dublin must have hurt terribly. So when they wrap that all up in a home game, in a you know, the victory for them this weekend puts them into, you know, playing Limerick to get into, you know, Munster final. They'll train very well the next couple of weeks. So it's a huge game, and we put that all together. You just back them. I feel that they've so much good traits that it'll come through when the pressure's on, and you know, they have to come from behind, and you know, as Paddy said there, and you could see it from the game, just the way they came back and when it was there. And I think John Cleary, being interviewed after, said the same thing. When the game was there to be won and Clare went after it, we sort of didn't. And that's what you'd expect from those guys. And look, that's a massive win for them. based on how the league went, and now the season, like one game, the whole season has completely changed for them in one way, and the inverse for Cork, unfortunately. And like Paddy, I thought, right, okay, is this a year we're going to see what Cork are capable of? And you know, there was signs. John Cleary's done pretty well, was what you'd see, but this just, you know, the people that were, you know, making that connection with the team, it feels like it broke after a bad defeat like that. And you know, the players will be down, and the energy around the place will probably be down, and it'll take a lot to nearly convince some of the players, and then the setup around it to get going again. So it's a hard number of weeks for Cork, particularly when they don't know really what competition they're going to be in. That's a hard environment for John to try and get those players right and get everything going, you know.
I think obviously relegation really cut Clare to the quick, but I think they were also really cut by the performance up in Derry, which was abysmal. And it was the most un-Clare-like performance you could ever possibly say. And it's a video I'm sure that they really went through in depth because it was so poor. But what I would say is that if Clare were in the Tailteann Cup, I would fancy them to win it. I wouldn't fancy Cork to win the Tailteann Cup. And because I don't think Cork would beat Cavan. I don't think Cork are set up to be the team that is tactical in the way Cavan would be. Paddy, I think you disagree.
No, well, one thing you mentioned Derry, I thought similarly to Derry, watching Derry at home in Park Heath there a few weeks ago to Clare, I thought Clare were very impressive. When you're set up against a blanket defence and, you know, Clare carried down the wings, but they got fierce energy from fellas cutting in from the sideline. And you see the last score came from very similar. Someone cut into the sideline as if you're going to traffic, just get out of it, pop a ball, and then a run over the top. Derry did it so well, and I'm not a fan of Derry's style. It's you know, it's very slow and but they inject so much pace once they hit the opposite 45. They really run at people and they create overlaps and create loops. I thought Clare were very, very similar yesterday. I was really impressed by them. And Malone coming up from the back was outstanding. The last 20 minutes was phenomenal. Jay Malone, coming up from 6. Yeah, look, about Cork, I mean, I was looking at that. We've a 3-week wait now until the semi-finals of Leinster and Ulster before we'll know whether we're heading for Tailteann or heading for Sam Maguire. And then it's another 3 weeks, I think, 3 or 4 weeks before that starts. So it's a long 6-week block, 3 weeks in the unknown. I think they'll be cheering on the likes of Donegal and Armagh and Louth and those lads in a couple of weeks' time. But Yeah, look, it's a colossal. Again, this season, this new format, you don't know yet. I don't know yet the importance of Mayo being a third seed as opposed to first seed. I'm looking at the fixtures and home and away and stuff and trying to figure out, is it that big a blow for Cork to come in now? If they get in, they'll come in as fourth seed as opposed to second seed if they lost the Munster final to Kerry. How big? Look, that's a lovely complaint if we have it that we're fourth seeds as opposed to in the Tailteann.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's
Paddy, sorry, just to come in there. One thing, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this. Anytime I watch Cork, and I know Kevin Walsh is down there and an excellent coach, no firsthand. Some of the scores, for example, that Clare got yesterday, there's bodies knocking around. There's Cork bodies knocking around defensively, but it's so easy wriggle past the guy, or it's so easy get your shot off or the pass you want. The pressure that they put on the ball or the physicality that they bring, particularly, just around their 45 or just outside it, isn't there. There's too many people, I feel, looking at the next guy to take this position or that position, or he to do this, that, the other. And there isn't that physicality, I suppose is the word I'd use, around there that puts real pressure and gets that real turnovers or makes a dent on the opposition. It's sort of too easy, I think, at times to get through Cork. I know.
I was sent a clip this morning by someone of one of the Clare scores. Second half of the Clare sub 17 from Ennis. He came on and he came across ball.
Gavin Cooney, on his left foot,
ball came to Sexton. Sexton just popped it off. And you're counting the Cork numbers. Cork had probably 13, 14 back in that zone, but there wasn't. The clip was shown from the keeper working it all the way up, and there wasn't a single hand laid on any Clare man for that score. And that was championship. That was 10 minutes to go. That was, and that's James's point. Someone said to me last night, he thought there was a lot of bluffing in terms of numbers back. You get back in the position, but the engagement wasn't there. It's very, and that's been an issue. I've been very critical of Cork in the last couple of years. I thought we fouled too much. Yesterday, we were at the other end of the spectrum where we just didn't engage. We thought the numbers would force them out, but Clare really went at us. Micheál Martin made one of the best saves. I don't know, was it shown on the game last night, but it was one of the best saves I've seen from Bohannon coming through. He panned it out for 45. At that stage, it was a level game, I thought, and they missed. Keelan Sexton missed the 45. I thought this will be it. We'll push on here, but no, James is dead right. Defensively, we're so porous when teams run at us. In spite of having almost every player inside the 45 yesterday, there was numerous occasions where Clare broke through. It's a huge concern from a Cork point of view. I think one thing we don't have is physical size in the backline. Our half backline is a small enough half backline. I do think we lack a real presence in that backline, an old school, your Graham Canty kind of style. Even Malone on the other side was a big man for Clare, and Jamie Brennan in the full backline as well. They have a few big stoppers. Cork lacked that kind of fierce, aggressive streak, and it was just so disappointing because again, as I said, there was signs there that Cork were coming. I just thought it was too one-dimensional for Cork. It was very much outside that zone, no real injection of pace. Rory Dean a few times was very dangerous, made a few half breaks, but again, he's all left-footed, so Clare were very clever, showing him onto the right, and it was just stifled out. A cracking last minutes.
And put them on again. I come back down to the job as well. I think you made a really good point that the job that Pierce Lillis did on Sean Powter was outstanding. What did you think of it, Maurice?
It's hard to get a proper sense of it when you're not there, but when you talk about the credit Colm Collins deserves, I think a lot of it, look, you're trying to define what is good coaching, and to me good coaching is improving a team on what was there before or learning from your losses. I thought it was really interesting that Colm said after the game that it was in his mind, and that going down the close stretch, that they were 6 up against Kildare. They scored once more in the final 20 minutes, lost that game. 6 up against Dublin, didn't score for the final 20 minutes. Clare kicked a point in the 48th minute against Cork in the league. They were within 2 points, and then it totally unravelled. And you flip that and see what they did at the weekend. Cathal O'Connor kicked a bad wide in the first half. He was pulled at half time, kind of rootlessly. Darren O'Neill came in, had a fine game in midfield. Gavin Cooney, he started both those games against Clare and Dublin, came on in the second half, as Paddy mentioned, kicked a great point. I think that not to get too tied up in numbers straight away, but the definitive stat for me was GA Statsman, who does great work on social media, had this. Clare had 18 kickouts. Cork had 28 kickouts. Clare had 30 shots, Cork had 24. I think that's damning from a Cork perspective. And that's why what I'm getting at there is I think how you attack is related to how you defend. So you look at the point just before the one Paddy referenced there is a kick out. It's a big long stoppage. Clare do their bunch of break thing. They've been doing this for years in the middle. It's pinged. Stephen Ryan pings it straight down the middle. It's 2 kick passes inside to Emmett McMahon, who kicks his first point from play. On the flip side, Cork are slow and monotonous. It makes it a lot easier to defend when you're building that way. So you've all these kickouts, but you're not actually getting off shots, or you're not creating an office. So Poucher's points that Paddy referenced, that came off the Clare kickout. O'Driscoll's goal chance, that came off the Clare kickout. But beyond that, they weren't getting enough building their own attack. You know what I mean? So I think that's a problem. It's how you attack is related to how a team defends. And what Clare did was they packed that 45. They hit with venom when he got there. So oftentimes fouling, kind of deliberately fouling. It was interesting actually. At the very end of the game, that goal chance that Paddy referenced, that started with Malone standing in the midfield. He did that old trick, putting your hand up in the air, with whatever signal it was. They vacated that space on the inside. It was a runner from deep. And just to go back to that thing about learning from your past mistakes, Colin Collins said after the game that the reason he picked Killian Ruan was because that number 4 jersey was up for grabs, but he can get forward. He kicked a wide just before he got that winner. He actually should have had an assist in the first half, but Sexton put it wide. But that was exactly it. It was a trademark. That stuff doesn't happen by accident. Like Stephen Ryan, there was a shot that dropped short. Goalkeeper carries it out. Runner's bursting from deep, and he finds himself in an ocean of space and hand passes over the bar. So I think from a Clare perspective, that's perfect execution there. Yeah,
just to follow up, Maurice has mentioned there the amount of shots taken by Clare. Clare were very wasteful, but they had the belief to go for it. They kept taking shots, and it was a swirling wind. Cork, on the other hand, didn't go for it. You know, they kept playing it safe, kept working around. And I thought a few things epitomised that. A few times Cork went long and caught marks in the middle of the field, or they won the throw-ins, for instance. But at no stage they look in for a kick pass. You know, there was a few times they caught a great ball and it was literally stop, turn around, give back easy, as opposed to
phase 1 over rather than hear the consistency.
You know, it almost felt like you were looking at a team who was afraid to make mistakes, was afraid to have the shot, and that would give you an indication of the way Cork were playing. They were playing kind of not within themselves, but there was a fear factor, or almost like a focus too much on not giving away possession. And like turnovers were crucial in the first half. It was all about turnovers, but it just showed, I thought, Cork's lack of willingness to really go for it. A few people caught the ball in the middle of the field, and it wasn't turned, look up for a 45, 50-yard pass. It was slow backwards and maintain possession. So that was just an indication of what stats might have backed up.
A bad day for Cork and a great day for Clare. Conversely, up in the west, a great day for Roscommon and a shocking day for Mayo, or a poor day for Mayo. Maurice, at what point did you realise that Roscommon were going to win?
Probably that spell. It was kind of in the middle of the second half when Mayo started running down the throat and up blind alleys, and it was kind of turnover after turnover. And previously maybe they could have been able to force freeze in that situation, but Roscommon just dined on that. Roscommon know exactly what they're about. In a similar vein to Clare, you know, they've got perfect structure and what they're doing. They stick to it. Ironically, I've covered a lot of Roscommon this year. I don't think one game that they've been involved in has been a great game, and I think they love that. Like, drag it down into the trenches. They're brilliant. They're so convicted in what they're doing. They're so confident in how to execute their game plan. I thought Enda Smith was brilliant. Yes, he was playing in a much deeper role, but he was absolutely fantastic. I thought they got their matchups right pretty much all over the pitch. I don't know. We might as well get to this. I don't know how much Mayo put weight in yesterday. I don't think they really care about that result. I don't know if they were necessarily going for it, but that's not to take away from Roscommon, who were going for it. And you know, David Burke said after the game that what did this mean to him? Everything. So their want was much greater, and they got the result that they fully deserved.
James, Mayo I thought they were really poor yesterday.
Yeah, they were poor, and got caught, and people were mentioning ambush about Roscommon. I think that's an insult to Roscommon, really. You know, it's third Division 1 have been progressing year on year, and with Davy Burke have just elevated that another step. So they're a strong team, but for me, the question you asked Morris there, when did you know Roscommon were going to win it? The amount of, because of the conditions, the amount of ball that was on the ground. I think there was one clip in particular, I think it's where Jim Murtagh got his last point, where the ball was on the ground and one group went for it, spilled to another place.
Spurred away, and another one. Yeah.
The throw in or the shoulder in was always won by a Roscommon player, pretty much. Right throughout the game. So any of that dirty ball on a day like that was, the team that wins the most of those usually wins the game. So Roscommon, I know Kevin McSay has mentioned attitude a lot. But Roscommon's attitude was spot on, and I think Davy Burke was mentioning, Easter Sunday was the first thing that he heard out of his players when they got together. So Roscommon's attitude was excellent. But there's lots of things, like you mentioned Enda Smith. I thought he was absolutely superb. I did. I thought, at the start of the game, Mayo pressed the Roscommon kick out. They pushed big numbers up. There was 9-10 in their half, and Enda Smith really turned the tide. And I think he shook Mayo a little bit by some of the fielding he'd done, some of the primary possession he won on their kick out. So even at an early junction, he had a big impact on the game. And obviously scoring the penalty and his general work rate and his ability to carry the ball at full pace. I think he was gaining ground on Paddy Durkin at one stage in one of those runs, soling the ball. That's top level speed that he has. So he's a phenomenal player and did very well yesterday. Jim Murtagh, obviously, and look at those loads of others. Even Ben O'Carroll didn't score, but the work rate that he did and the general nuisance value that he brought kept Mayo honest in a way, I suppose, defensively. So they've got a couple more strings to their bow, Roscommon, and they're a really good team. But what I found during the league, Mayo had a very good league campaign, obviously. But I thought a lot of things went for them. They got momentum early. I thought the break of the ball sort of went. I think tight calls Mayo sort of got. Sometimes it happens when you're winning games and things are going well and everything. There's a flow that can sometimes happen. And Mayo seemed to get into that flow during the league and things went their way. I think any 50-50 call yesterday didn't go Mayo's way, and I'm not at all criticizing the ref, not in any way. But it's funny how it goes sometimes. I suppose is the point I'm making. Roscommon were the dominant one. They were the physical. They were.
Yeah. So they got the balance of decisions.
Is there a human psychological sort of event that happens there? And if there's close calls, it goes the way of the sort of dominating team. But look, at an overall level, I thought Roscommon were good. They know what they're about. They've obviously prepared very, very well, very together, very honest. I do think they need to get it away from their goalkeeper a little bit quicker. Or their goalkeeper needs to deliver it a little bit quicker. I think he holds onto the ball a bit too long, and he'll be targeted at that more. But outside that, I thought their composure on the ball was very good. And Mayo on the hindsight, I don't agree with you, Morris. I think Kevin McStay has repeatedly gone after mentioned that the winning Connacht again was something that, so you can't say that in the media and then go into a dressing room and sort of, or you're prepped for a game and sort of do something else. You become a bluffer if that's the sort of, so I don't imagine that. But I do think that going up to Croker, winning a national title, and there's huge energy and emotional energy that's used up in that, and the prep for it and the execution of it, and then the relief that's after it. The training, the prep, the training, and whatever in a week is different after winning a national title than it would be for any other week. There's no two ways about it. So that may, you're talking a couple of percent. It may have impacted Mayo. They still may not have won, even if they were at their peak the way Roscommon played yesterday. So look. I think we talked before that, and it's. I think this is crazy. I think this is why this season is crazy. No one wants to win the league. No one really wants to win provincial titles. Hopefully they want to win the All Ireland in a couple of weeks. Everyone
wants to win the Tailteann. Oh my God, down to the Tailteann.
Yeah, it's a bizarre scenario. But if you look at where Mayo are, and the management team are strong enough, and the players, there's enough experienced players there. They have 6 weeks. possibly to just work on a few things. And they've had a lot of games in a row, and right through. They started early back with their preseason. So I think the 6 weeks, if you distill it down right and analyze it right and utilize it right, will be very beneficial for Mayo.
I think the problems are. I think the problems are really profound. I think they were out tackled. Roscommon made 50% more tackles in the first half. I cannot remember Mayo being out tackled before. So that's a big thing. You can fix that, right? You can fix work rate. You can fix mental preparation. I think there's two other problems. I think Roscommon's kicking was way ahead of Mayo's yesterday. I thought the kicking in the forwards was way ahead of them. You look at the points, they set up Kieran Murtagh for the shot, but look at Cox came on and hit a great point on the run. Their kick passing down the field was just better, number one. Number two, I cannot see Mayo winning in All-Ireland with the team set up the way it's set up, from centre back to midfield to centre forward. I can't see it. And when I wasn't there, Maurice, from being at the game, what did you see in that area?
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue, not an issue that you could just isolate to last weekend. I think that's going back over the league. That I don't think they.
Yeah, we can say. Well, in fairness, we've said it here a few times. So
yeah,
what would you do?
Good question. Yeah, the thing. If you're a Mayo now, I think people are dismissive of the championships kind of because we don't know. This is a new structure and we don't know. So you kind of assume you're going into a group stages and there's going to be 4 teams and 3 will get out and it'll all be fine. And I disagree with that. I think there is a cost to being a third seed, particularly because I don't know if people understand this. These fixtures are preordained. There's already been drawn. If you're a third seed, you play the first seed first and then you play the second seed. So if, for example, it'll be easy to say this in hindsight, but if Mayo end up in a group with Dublin and the Ulster runners up, you've got 2 really difficult games there. And that's coming off the back of a loss. So suddenly, worst case scenario, even if they were, you can say, they'll win their last game and they're into a preliminary quarterfinal. You're coming off the back of losing all momentum, 3 losses, a preliminary, you're going in as the third seed. That means the preliminary quarterfinal, you're away for that game and you're out in the quarterfinal a week later. I don't think that's ideal. So I wouldn't be dismissive of what it means to be a third seed. If you're Mayo, I think you need to be planning for a Dublin or a Kerry or an Armagh, and all these teams have huge punch power in their halfback line. It's a team, the Gavin Whites of the world, Jack McCaffrey's. Anybody watch Armagh on Saturday night? Kieran Mackin was unbelievable, and that's with Charlie O'Byrne's sitting in the bench. So I think that's where you're looking at from a Mayo perspective. I don't know if they have that right now. We haven't seen him because he's been out injured. Enda Hession, I think, would be perfect as a wing forward in this team, but that means you're doing a bit of reconfiguration. So I don't know if they have 6 right. If I was to pick a Mayo team for if they're playing Dublin in 6 weeks' time, I think I would probably go with Reap and goals. One of Coyne, McBrien, Callanan. I think I'd play Durkin at 6, Coyne on one wing. This is not a criticism of Loftus, but I just think they would have a better balance if they played him at 6. You can play whoever you want, McHugh at that wing. I'd mix their midfield too. I think the balance in midfield is wrong. I think Jordan Flynn could go to midfield. You could partner him with Jim O'Connor. That means Hession's on the wing. He'll stick with whoever is that flyer from the opposition. I personally think Ryan O'Donoghue would be more suited to 11. At 12, then Jack Carney has been a great find for him, and you can pick whoever you want between Aidan O'Shea, Tommy Conroy, Killian O'Connor, James Carr inside. You still have huge punch power off the bench if you were to do that.
You're leaving Conor Loftus and Matty Rowan out of that team.
Yeah, and sometimes I think these are fine margins. I think you get great punch power out of the 2 of them coming on. McLaughlin would also add to that. You have experience in Doherty and McLaughlin and Henley if you want it. I think the balance for the team will be better for that. But Mayo, the goal has to be to win in All-Ireland. If you're trying to win Ireland, you should be targeting how are you going to set up against Dublin, Tyrone. I didn't even mention Conor Myler winning all that. And I think their balance at that would be better. James, can I just go back to something you said? I think this is so important.
Before you go back to James, I want to ask James, what do you think of Maurice's team?
On Enda Hession, it's an interesting one. Like Enda Hession is a brilliant player. Played a lot of his underage at wing forward. So he's a very, very capable, as you saw against Tyrone with when he put Niall Morgan on his backside. He's a very, very capable and accomplished player, not just for the defensive aspect of a wing forward role. He'd be very good from an attacking sense as well, and his acceleration from a standing position is frightening. Very Jack McCaffrey like, Gavin White, as you mentioned. So that's certainly an interesting option. Sam Callanan as well. Obviously Sam and Bob Toohey, with the under-20 connection weren't involved yesterday. Their options as well. And Sam was with us last year. His athletic ability is phenomenal as well, as you saw him on Shane Walsh. So they're two definite aspects. But there's going to be some free for all, I would say, over the next 6 weeks up front. Because
midfield. What would you do with midfield? Would you bring Jack Carney to midfield?
Well, one time. Over the last 2 games, Mayo have been beaten in the middle of the field. I think that's clear for everyone to see. So after 2, it's becoming a bit of a trend. So there's definitely something that needs to be there. Jack Carney is probably one of the best fielders I've ever come across. He's not huge in stature, but he always reminded me of doing Paddy's on there. John O'Driscoll years and years ago. Not a huge guy, but a brilliant fielder of the ball. So he definitely has huge fielding ability and has grown as a player, as you've seen this year. So certainly an option. I think Jordan's probably strongest position is midfield. So I'd say that'll be looked at, and then that brings your if you move one of those, it brings your half forward line into question. And are we getting enough return there from an attacking threat point of view? If you move Jordan then out there, who scored heavy during the initial stages of the league campaign. So that's definitely an area. I think from half back line to the half forward line, there's definitely places or structure that'll be changing, I'd say, over the next 6 weeks.
James, this is like the crux of this, what we're talking about, and the weight you put in yesterday's performance, I think comes down to Sam Callanan. And I totally bow to you on this, but I don't think any team ever goes out to deliberately not give it 100%. But I think this stuff is subliminal. I think it's messaging. It's stuff that happens in a dressing room during a week, and it can assume. That's in my experience anyway. So if I was to say to you in December that you're going to lose Lee Keegan and Oisin Mullen out of that back 6, you're going to be down. Dave McBreen got injured in the league final. He was pulled before the start of this game. Rowan Brickenden, it's my understanding, has a long-term injury. Michael Plunkett is also injured. So you're suddenly down 4 of your defenders. You throw in on top of that Owen McLaughlin goes down in the second half. And then I tell you as well that Sam Callanan went stride for stride with Shane Walsh a week ago, and he's left sitting on the bench for the whole course of that. They don't even look to him. Bob Toohey wasn't even in 26 because they're going to save him for an under-20s game next week. What would you have said?
I agree with you that the subliminal is a huge part of it. The messaging during the week and the lead in and the change of body language of a management team can have a huge. 100% agree with that. Sam hasn't played that many games this year either. No, he did very well in the league final, but he hasn't been a starter. Has he started 2 games this league campaign? I'm not sure he has. But I accept your point. After a very good game, you'd feel you're ready to go for the next game. But Kevin McStay and Mayo picked a team, and they've changed consistently throughout the league. And they've tried to develop teams. So they absolutely picked a team that they thought would do the job. Against Roscommon, but they were out fought and outplayed. Yeah, they've work to do. They've work to do as a result. But I suppose the return from play is an area. And look, it's been an area, but that's been. I'm not sure the exact figures. I'm sure you have them over the last 2 games, Maurice. The return from play.
The last 10 minutes, James. I tell you why I think Mayo. The other reason why I think Mayo are in enormous trouble. The last 10 minutes of the match, when they were hammering away at the Roscommon goal, trying to run it through the crowd, trying to chase a goal when there were 4 points down with 6-7 minutes left, and they're going for goals. And if they tip a couple of points there, get back to 2 points, and suddenly you're 2 points down with 4 minutes left, and it just felt like lads running in to a crowd trying to offload under pressure, and I don't think they could have. If Roscommon had asked them to do it, it's exactly what Roscommon would have wanted them to do.
There's no doubt Roscommon were set up very, very well. But let's like, football is crazy, right? It is. Just for a second now, just
I know what you're going to say. The first 5 minutes,
Ryan O'Donoghue, as it's a pretty simple loop and hand pass.
It's a simple hand pass. It's a simple hand pass.
He puts into Tommy Conroy, and Tommy Conroy runs through goalie's net, everything, and like that's a goal. Roscommon are in doubt, and Stevie Cohen's shot. Those two go in.
Yeah,
it's a completely and utterly. And I know we'll never be able.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're right. I agree.
I agree. But that's absolutely a Mayo victory. Then you'd have to assume that'd be a Mayo victory. The way it worked for Roscommon in the first half, and the two goals that Roscommon got were from the classic invented by Kieran Kilkenny, the backdoor cut, and Paul Mannion, the backdoor cuts, which is 101 of defending. You don't let that happen to you. If a guy is coming through, you can sort of sense that hand pass is coming, the loopy hand pass over the top, the guy's going to spin, and you just don't let that happen. The two goals came from it. Crazy. So if you take out everything else, and no matter what system and what formation that you set up, there's times where your read as a defender in a there's going to be 1-on-1 situations at times like that. Your read as a defender is you have to cut off the risk. You have to make sure that at worst it's a point, because they're coming against a strong breeze and it's hard score and all that kind of stuff. So those were huge, obviously, events in the game. But look, from an attacking sense, it's a classic, a very strong breeze, having to score, Roscommon everyone back. So it was the ultimate test in can you create scoring situation, and look, credit to Roscommon.
Can I jump in there, James? And I'm delighted Mayo are taking some heat off Cork here as well. But you spoke the importance of moments. I mean, going back to the Cork game, I know you mentioned Brian O'Driscoll rattled the crossbar in the first half from intercepted kick out from Powter, and that would have put Cork in 4 up. And like, it was, your gilt edge 1-on-1 chance. Rocket. I'm not sure if the keeper touched it, but going back to Mayo yesterday and watching that game, that opening 15 minutes very cagey, low scoring. Those couple of moments where that hand pass didn't go to hand, whereas the 2 Roscommon goals, if you look at the bounce, was just perfectly into the stride on both occasions. And James mentioned Dublin and Kieran Kilkenny, and the basics that they just were so consistent with, that those small things, goal chance, if it's into a stride, we lose sight of that. And the post-mortem here from Mayo is that you have to tear things up and all that after a week after league final. Games are decided on small moments, and in conditions like yesterday, once that goal went in and Roscommon had that belief and cushion, it changes the game completely. I think maybe we can be too quick to jump down on Cork and up on Clare, and vice versa with Mayo Roscommon. I think there's fine margins between 2 Division 1 teams there in Castlebar yesterday, 2 Division 2 teams. There's very little between these teams, and in the modern game, if you get ahead at all, if you get a goal, it's such a cushion that you can comfortably play that style and go on the counter attack. So I wouldn't be going OTT on our destruction of Mayo or Cork here.
So except I think we have raised flags for several weeks now about both teams, whether in victory or in defeat. That's the only thing I'll say. And I agree, Ryan O'Donoghue is a brilliant footballer, and I'd say he can't believe himself he missed that hand pass. But something else happened about 3 seconds later when Tommy Conroy turned inside and he tried to hand pass a point. Tommy Conroy had a simple hand pass ball back out to the penalty spot, where I think I can just see in the corner, Aidan O'Shea is coming flying and he's on his own. And that's another simple finish. So they butchered that 1 goal chance.
Well, I got back minutes yesterday and Arsenal-Liverpool second half was on, and I flicked on the last few minutes. I'm an Arsenal fan, and Martinelli breaking, Saka through the middle, a simple ball through, he overcooks it. It's fine margins. It's fine margins these games. So
and you do it. We have to talk about the most important Connacht Championship match of the weekend, Maurice, happened over in Gaelic Park. And I think anyone who's ever played in Gaelic Park or drank in the bars of McLean Avenue or been around modern New York, around like the Long Hall or places like that, will understand just how brilliant a place in the world New York was to be on. Well, maybe every Saturday night, but definitely last Saturday night.
Oh yeah, it was exhilarating, wasn't it? I wouldn't even try analyze a game like that. It felt like it was played in the Twilight Zone. It was absolutely insane from the start. I was probably the only person praying it didn't go to extra time. We had a club game Sunday morning, so I was desperate to try and get to bed. Away to Roscommon at 10 a.m. on Easter Sunday. There was 2 glamour-ties this weekend.
Cruelty. That's cruelty. The people are suffering, Maurice, and you're right there.
How did it go, Maurice? How did the game end up?
We won. Yeah, we won.
Excellent.
We can talk about that glamour tie later. We'll focus on this one first. I thought this was, as whatever about quality, I thought it was an unbelievably entertaining game. Like it was it was end to end. It was really kind of box office stuff. There was a really kind of carnival feel about it. Even just to see the sirens above the stand and how into it the crowd were. There seemed to be a large cohort of Leitrim there as well. I think that frenzy contributed to a lot of what we'd seen. Like there's no getting away from how bad Leitrim's finishing was, basically all day, right up until the penalty shootout. But I don't think you have to factor in how the pressure of an atmosphere like that and what that might do to a team. I also just think Eamon Mulligan was on commentary. You could see how much he was hurting watching it. But David Brune was the only other player, bar Donald Wynne, who played all 12 games from in 2022, and he's also out. So that's a lot of experience to be missing. And then you throw in the fact that Anna Reynolds came off after 20 minutes, and I just think Leitrim walked into a perfect storm. They got caught by a haymaker. They probably saw it coming, but you're without a lot of experience. You're in a crazy atmosphere. Everything is going wrong. On top of that, this is as strong a New York team as we've seen in a long time. I think their performance against Sligo last year was better, but they didn't get the rub that time, and they did this time. Going back to Paddy's point about fine margins, and they got the big thing. It wasn't as true in Cork and Clare, but in modern football now, I think matchups are suddenly a lot more important because teams are trying to mirror each other and you're pushing kind of 15 on 15. It's actually really important who you have one-on-one. And I thought New York got their matchup spot on. Looking at the two teams on paper before the game, I would have thought Owen Kearns would have gone to keep Byrne. He didn't. Alan Campbell did and did a fine job on him. Johnny Glynn and Gavin O'Brien are absolutely dominant in midfield. It just never really clicked for Paul Keane. He had a couple of chances, and maybe if one of them had gone over, you could have seen him hit a roll, but it never really happens. And even though Adrian Vardy was, by all accounts, struggling for fitness and was taken off, Shane Carty was absolutely unbelievable.
I thought Shane Carty was the best player in the field. I thought Shane Carty was absolutely outstanding.
Maybe it's just me, or maybe he misspoke, but Shane Carty said on the Sunday game last night that he was kicking with his left foot all day because he tore his quad during the week. Now, I presume he means strained, but even still, I think that's astonishing. So yeah, I thought it was an incredible result for New York. They'd be very interested to see how they go from here. They obviously know Sligo pretty well, but it blows the Connacht Championship wide open. I'd say it's a tough one for Andy Moran, and they'll have nightmares about some of those missed chances. But as I said, I do think a crucial factor is just how crazy the night itself was. I think
it's one of the great ironies that in probably the most modern city in the world, a really incredible city, you have an unbelievably traditional Irish experience there in the championship thing. You had a tight ground. There's people hanging out over the railings. There's people in trees. There's people pushed down onto the pitch. All along the sideline, there's players. There's officials and subs pushed out onto the field. The game is flying up and down. It was fairly anarchic. Leitrim missed, you can say 3 goal chances. I think they've missed 5 because of the setup pass went wrong a couple of times as well. And still, you kind of thought from a long way out, Mayo, New York have a monster chance here, and they kept at it, and I like to see something like the 2 Brosnans and Mikey Boyle born in New York, another guy Killian born in
Boyle,
London, there. And all of those guys playing a game that was kind of given to them from their families and coming together, and what they did. And the atmosphere after the game, and a proper pitch invasion after the match to celebrate, in which the stewards were involved in the pitch invasion. And of course, why wouldn't they be? Because they've given a lifetime to this. It was just an incredible experience. And I think it has to be said, New York players deserve unbelievable credit for their conditioning. They were able to go up and down the pitch for the full game. Like, that's not simple when you do not have a league run of fixtures like Leitrim had.
And you throw in on top of that, it felt like a kind of a raucous club game, didn't it? You even had the controversial wide, and you can't beat a good.
The umpire was getting some
yeah.
He was really getting it.
Yeah, and I generally lean into the kind of romance of the GA too often, but you draw blood from a stone to see kind of two American-born players effectively win this game for them, in Shinkarty kicking that point on his left foot and Brosnan kicking the penalty. An unbelievable. John Radin has done great reporting on this for the Examiner, but an unbelievable story that was told afterwards that he wasn't supposed to take a penalty, but was told that if you don't take a penalty, Jamie Boyle, the cornerback, is going to take a penalty, and decided he probably had a better chance than Boyle did. So said he'd take the fifth one and absolutely nailed it.
It was a brilliant penalty. I think there's probably no unbiased way to say this, but I wish that had happened to any other county except Leitrim. I really wish it wasn't Leitrim and Andy Moran who were on the end. James, what would it be like to be Andy Moran on the plane coming home?
Oh gosh, there's no other way about it that it'd be incredibly tough for him. Everything was looking towards it. We think we talked us, a Sligo Leitrim sort of iconic semi-final, and the opportunity that would bring, promotion was there, so close for them this year. Last year hasn't happened, so he'll be very down in the dumps. There's no two ways about it. And I'm sure that a defeat like that, and you look at it from maybe some of the hardcore Leitrim fan side of point of view, as we're the team that's gave New York their first championship win, etc., etc. So there'll be some feedback that'll be hot and heavy. Will there?
In what way will that come?
That comes in various forms. That can be, getting out of the car, walking down the street to online to whatever. You can sense it. You can feel it.
Would you have had stray comments to yourself in public in Mayo after losses?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I think Kevin McStay had an article at the weekend as well. I think when he was walking down the street, he felt. He felt and heard some comments, with his connection with Roscommon, obviously with Mayo and everything that went on there. So it does happen. There's a lot of emotion, as you alluded to, from the New York side in games like that. So there will be disappointed people, and in modern society, there's people are not afraid to vent their frustration. So did it get worse?
Can I just ask you, we won't dwell on this, but can I ask you, did it get worse? Do you think things got worse in terms of the abuse in your second term in charge of Mayo as against your first term?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think things have changed. And look, there's a whole discussion on this we'll go into someday, but I think COVID has exacerbated things a little bit in the whole period around it. I think people's tolerance and patience mightn't be what it was, and I know that's a huge generalization, but I certainly in the second term felt that, even at games, in game, pre-game after 2 or 3 minutes, and even the first game I went to this year was the Galway game in Castlebar in the league, and I brought my kids with me, and I was sitting in the middle of the stand, and I had the hood up and just nice and watching the game, and I couldn't believe I've always known there's noise. When I was on the sideline, there's noise behind you, and you get this din. But I couldn't believe the venom and what was being said during the game. This is after pretty much the ball has just been thrown in. So there hasn't really been any major play or any major mistake. So look, there will be that. But I suppose on Andy, Andy was probably one of the most clever players I've ever been involved in. And you saw that when he got Player of the Year, how he used his body, how he used his handling and his craft and guile. He's a really, really clever player. And, that transmits how he thinks about the game and how he wants the game to be played. So this is a hard learner for him, and as a manager, you're going to get these. So I'm sure Andy is clever enough. He's enough confidence in himself to work through it, and he'll be a much better manager as a result of the outcome. But just back to your point, but if you don't mind, like the madness of New York and playing in New York, it's absolutely. When Maurice was talking there, like the exhilaration of it, the smell of hot dogs and steaks being cooked.
Fried onions. There's nothing like
into my mind for some reason. Like the last time we were there a couple of years ago, the food and the beer it's all you can smell when you're walking into the dressing room pre-game. Because it's all going on at that stage. There's the whole show, and then how you get into and then I remember trying to get into the dressing. We went by subway to get out there the last time we went. So everything about it is completely different to what you normally do for a game. And then when you get there, the crowds around the place, getting into the dressing room was we were lucky to get in there because of the amount of people that were in front of it. The pitch, the surface, the train on the sideline, everything about it is just different. And I think Carnival is probably a good description of it. And that just adds to a little bit of the chaos. And, even the lines on the pitch, I remember our guys were, the 45, the 50, where there's lines, loads of different lines on the pitch, and you get a little bit confused there. There's loads of things that add to, that can add to the occasion. But certainly tough one for each of them, but I'm sure Andy and Co will bounce back from it.
I think carnival is a great word to describe it, and I have to say I thought it was captured brilliantly on GA Go by Darren Frehel and Emlyn Mulligan. I think they just got it. They got the night, and you could see all around the crowd. You nearly wish people wanted it could be over sooner so they could go off into the city or into the bars and enjoy it. I will say, by the way, in passing, I thought the RT Sunday game panel yesterday was brilliant on Roscommon, Mayo, Lee Keegan, Peter Canavan, Kieran Whelan with Joanne Cantwell. I thought it was the best panel they've had in a very, very long time. Paddy, what would it be like to be a Cork footballer this week?
Tough going.
Did you hear it?
The unknown, yeah, you would, of course, yeah. I suppose the tough thing is, like before, when the split season wasn't there, you might have drifted back in with your club now for a championship game or whatever for a few weeks. So it's interesting to see what they do. We've probably 6 weeks, as I said, to prep, same as Mayo. So yeah, I remember when you were playing and things were going badly, you would avoid certain situations, going down to club training. If you're still with Cork and you're just going to show face, you might be selective as to where, when you go down and where you stand and all that. Like Maurice, I'm sure, James, it's 10 times worse as a manager because the blame goes to the manager. And again, from being in the crowd teaches the abuse and the comments are scandalous. But that's just the way it is. Do you mind if I jump back there, Maurice and Paul? You might have the answer. New York, if they beat Sligo, am I right in saying they'll play in the 14 group stage? Whereas if they lose and go to Talton, they'll get a preliminary bye to the preliminary quarterfinal. They won't play in the group stage. I saw that tweeted yesterday. And if that is the case, then why is that the case? That they'll play in the group in Sam Maguire, but not in the Talton?
So that was we were given clarification on this in last week that they had planned for this, but I think that's, if you give me a second here, sorry.
I've put you on the spot. Sorry, Maurice.
Maurice, this is disappointing, Maurice.
That's what he's here for, Paddy.
This is kind of devastating. This is a devastating turn of events.
Do your job, Maurice.
Delay. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's poor.
If New York proceed to the Talton Cup, will become 17 teams with 3 groups of 4 and 1 group of 5. The CCC is to confirm the order and schedule of games in the groups, with each team having 2 home and 2 away games. So that's what would happen if they make the start. That's it. We're giving clarification on that during the week. So it will become 3 groups of 4 and 1 of 5.
Yeah. That's fine.
It creates great fun though. If Mayo or if New York can get by Sligo, which I have to say, I'd be worried for New York that Sligo. I think Sligo will be too powerful running through the middle on them. I think they'll create a huge amount of problems for them. And it's in Markovich Park. I think I really would fancy Sligo in that, but that creates a real dilemma. It'd be a magnificent dilemma if New York are in in the Sam Maguire. On the weekend, I want to turn to talk to Armagh and Antrim, the Ulster Championship, because we need to start talking as well about next week. But in passing, I want to talk about the Leinster Football Championship wins for Wicklow, for Offaly and for Laois. I think Wicklow were probably the most impressive of the wins there, and they go and play Kildare next. Offaly go and play Meath in the Maracana and Tullamore, and Laois against Laois now play Dublin, which could be quite interesting. And in Munster, Tipperary beat Waterford, and Tipperary now play Kerry. So what we're looking for in the next round of fixtures is what looked like being some fairly uncompetitive matches, which we will be talking about in the coming weeks. But when we talk about uncompetitive matches, I'd like to turn to Armagh Antrim. I thought Armagh were excellent, but I thought Antrim were so disappointed, and I looked at so disappointing. And just looking at Andy McEntee afterwards, he just looked disgusted after the game. They looked to me like a team who didn't fire a shot, Maurice.
Yeah, they did. So two sides to this. From a perspective, I thought again it was to a certain extent kind of green shoots. Colin Herbert was immense. It was interesting hearing Mushim Convent say on BBC before the game that he could be anything he wants to be in Gaelic football. That's a fairly high praise, and you definitely got a sense of that. They were starting to kick the ball a bit more. Grugan gave that one in for Jason Duffy's goal chance. Kieran Mackin sent one on the outside of his right boot. They had that weird one that Forker just lobbed in from the sideline that broke kind of kindly and nearly ended up in a goal. I mentioned Kieran Mackin earlier. For a guy who made his debut last year, I think he could be a very special player. Every time I watch him, it was interesting that you'd feel all right for McLeod who got pulled after 20 minutes, but it was interesting that was what Andy McLeod deemed necessary, that after 20 minutes he's going to send on Finnegan and try and, that was on his wing, wasn't it? So you're going to try and curtail him. On the flip side, from an Antrim perspective, yeah, it's hard to say, Paul, when you look at it, kind of zone out. You know, the last time Antrim were in a Ulster minor final was 1989. The last time they were in an under-21 final was 2006. They were in a senior final in 2009. Before that, it was 1970. St. Gauls had that great run in the club up until 2009. But after that, they've had nothing since. It's been a very grim decade since then. You add in on top of that they were hammered by Cavan in the first round last year. And I think, did they have the most opt-outs of anybody before the Tatlin Cup when they were beaten by Leitrim? I thought they were lucky to stay up in or Division 3 this year, by and large. So I think it's a grim enough picture there, and that is why, to my mind, the Tatlin Cup is so important for counties like Antrim. Like, if they were to get together and really give it a go and deliver silverware, given that prolonged stretch there, I think it would do wonders for the county. I think they've had a huge opportunity. It's exactly why competitions like this were deemed necessary. The prospect of realistically winning something, there's an attainable silverware there if they can get it together. That wasn't a reflection of what they are. So as poor as a lot of those signs were, I do think there's a huge opportunity there. There's by no means are you saying there's no talent there. Jordan.
No, absolutely not. There's really good footballers. You can see that from Sigerson Cup. There's really good footballers in Antrim, and they have a good manager who's organised and all of that. But there is nothing that you could see in the last 70 minutes against Armagh that would suggest that Antrim are going to win or compete seriously in the Tailteann Cup.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought Mark Jordan was brilliant wing back. I thought Peter Healy, their fullback, is a right player. Their top scorer in the league was Oran Westwood. He got pulled before the game, so they started McBride, Pat Sheevers, and there was one more late change. All right, Murray started as well. So you bring back in Westwood. They've got a line-harder defence now. They were carved open, and their conversion was similar to Leitrim. I think they was on 29%. So that's a real from play. That's a real cause for concern. But I do think that, given that there's, you can look at it this two ways. You can look at this as a team that were wiped by Cavan. I think that they have the most one-sided league game. Westmeath beaten by 30 points at one stage. You can also look at this on the flip side, that a team that went toe-to-toe with Down and Fermanagh in Division 3. I know you might know more about this. Offaly ended up running out 6-point winners, but it sounded like that game was very close. Before
there was nothing in it. Like, the Offaly goalie made an unbelievable save for what would have been an equalising goal, and Offaly went down and got a goal and won by 6. Like, there was nothing between the teams. Antrim had every chance of beating down. They beat Cavan, So this is there's a lot of good footballers there, and I'd be really disappointed though that they didn't bring more. That's my point. For a county where there is a lot of work going on, and we should acknowledge that. And there's people who love football up there, and they're really doing a huge amount of work. But I would be disappointed that they didn't bring more on a championship match at 5:00 and a good crowd in the athletic grounds.
Can I make one brief point on that to go back to something Paddy said earlier? I think it would have been really easy for Andy Mackey to go out and do a 50-man behind the ball, a contained job from minute one at the weekend. And to their credit, to my mind, they didn't do that. They went and tried to play football. And if they're going to win a Talented Cup and go and want to genuinely progress, I think he was right to have a go.
That's fair.
I think it would have been very easy to go out and do a damage limitation job and try and curtail them. And I have to say, when you watch Armagh like that, Armagh have no excuses this year. They really, even without Rian O'Neill and Andrew Murray at the weekend, they've got so much talent in their team that to see finally, Turbot set inside. I mentioned this point previously. I don't know why they couldn't do that with Rian O'Neill before, but Armagh have absolutely no excuse. So I don't think it was a bad team that Antrim McCarver opened by at the weekend. I think they deserve credit for going out and having a go. And I think that would ideally stand to them for a talent. I think Talented Cup is a massive opportunity, particularly for a county like Cavan.
Two enormous games in the Ulster Senior Football Championship next weekend. Fermanagh Derry at 5:00 in Enniskillen on Saturday evening. The following afternoon, 4:00 in Omagh in Healy Park, Tyrone against Monaghan. Let's just preview those two games. Paddy, what are you looking at there? Tyrone against Monaghan.
Yeah, I mean, next weekend they're the only two games on next weekend. It's kind of the down week before a really
weekend,
the following weekend. So yeah, like that, those 4 teams are on that top side of the Ulster draw. So you'll have a provincial finalist from that. 3 of the teams very strong. Obviously, Tyrone, Monaghan. We saw a kick towards the end of the league in Tyrone. Monaghan obviously survived again. Derry's hard to know what that defeat in Croke Park to Dublin will have done to their conference. I think they'll have too much for Fermanagh, and they'll be 1 game away from an Ulster final. Look, it's again going back to the inequalities of the provincial system. You've a real mouth-watering Ulster campaign kicking off up there. You've both sides of the draw, very, very interesting. Derry are a really, really interesting team because I think Derry possibly could be, they could end up 4th seeds if they lose the weekend or next weekend, or they could end up going and winning Ulster. I like the look at Derry. I thought against Cork, they came on to Cork. Chris McKay came on and tweaked the hammy after a few minutes. It was madness. I thought actually in hindsight, going back, Derry, played the Glen lads the week after the All-Ireland final, and then they came on to Cork and they were guaranteed, the league final, and they played a lot of their main boys and then brought on a lot more of them. And I know he's operating at a tight panel, but I thought it was madness. And you see maybe in the league final, glass going off, they don't have the strength and depth. So will they get to their strongest 15 against Fermanagh? They might need their strongest 15 against Fermanagh. I like the look at Derry. I hate the way they play, but I think they do it really, really well. The way they attack, I thought.
Would you be happy with Cork playing like that if they were winning?
You would, I suppose. It's just what they do. I suppose what Derry do is they dictate the terms of the game, where you have got to almost mirror Derry's style, because they are now. What I will say is they're very good in their own kick out, and they do press the opposition kick out, which at least gives some of the structure to the game. But when they slow it down but the way they attack, I was really, really impressed by them. Their speed, they inject speed. Whether they have the forwards up top, the range of forwards up top to score enough in the big games, that's obviously still to be shown. But and Rory Gallagher, obviously, from seeing him, I was only about 20-30 yards away from him. He is absolutely off his game on the sideline in terms of instructions. So that'll be very interesting. I think Derry should have enough. Tyrone, Monaghan, I think Tyrone will be too strong. I think they looked as though they were teetering after 3 or 4 league games, but they have got the bounce. I wouldn't say they've been written off, but they have the possibility now of coming in and taking out Monaghan, and then having a cracker of a semi-final against Tyrone. Derry will be a lovely one to look forward to. So like, yeah, I think the championship this weekend was all about the couple of games we covered in detail there, Clare, Cork and Mayo Roscommon. You've those couple of games next week, and then I think we'll really start to get a feel for what way the Sam Maguire is going to fall 2 weeks' time. And it's very, very exciting, something different, hopefully. As Mara said, I fear that the 3 teams getting to 4 will dilute the intensity of the thing. But up in Ulster, it's about to kick off. I think we're going to be in for a really, really open championship, and I am fully supporting Down and Cavan on the other side of the draw.
I was at last year. Derry played Offaly in Tullamore, and I was standing about 20 meters behind the Derry dugout as well. And Rory Gallagher was on the edge of the pitch the whole time. And Derry just like annihilated Offaly. It was essentially over as a contest after 15-20 minutes. It was obvious what way it was going. He was relentless from start to finish, and I have to say, the players obviously really warmed him and really, really like him, but I would not have liked to have been playing down along the side of the pitch. But equally, there was an Offaly fella behind him who obviously kind of cracked after about 10 minutes and spent the rest of the game just telling Gallagher that he would win nothing unless he got Jimmy McGuinness to go and help him. That he'd never win nothing without McGuinness, and he never would. So that was the only entertainment in the whole game. James, those 2 matches, how do you see? So Paddy, you see them as Derry and Tyrone. James, how do you see those 2 matches going?
Similar, I'd say. Yeah. I'd say there was a bit more spitting on the hands when that Offaly supporter.
There was.
What's the bets on a Derry player turning around to Rory or something to tell him to shut the hell up? You know, I know that level of instruction. For me is over the top. But look, he's doing very well with that group. Tyrone for me are bubbling away. I think they're going to be serious later on this season. I just genuinely do. I don't know. I think that
there's something there, isn't there?
They're like a big juggernaut. They're taking the turn during the league, and there's like they're finally, they're pointing the right way, and they're building up speed. They're just the 2 Canavans possibly just add something different and dangerous to what they already have. And you go through their sprinkling players. Everyone knows them. This is from Myler to Hart to right through to Hampsey. They're pissed over the last year and how things went, all that kind of stuff. I think Tyrone are going to be big players this year. I do. I think it's turned. It's not. I wouldn't have thought that when they got smashed early on in the league, but just the way it's been going the last couple of weeks, I think they've got the bit between their teeth and they're strong. I think they'll beat Monaghan. It mightn't be pretty or anything like it, but they'll beat Monaghan. Derry, I think will certainly overcome Fermanagh. And we know what Derry are and how they play and what they're about. So they'll try and dominate proceedings, and they'll try and dictate what happens and suffocate to get into a lead and then just control it on their own terms. So I can't see Fermanagh, even though after a good league campaign, I can't see them coming close to Derry. Just on Armagh, if you don't mind me going back. Yeah, I've been critical of Armagh during the league. I think there's more in them than what they're playing. I think they're caught up in their own sort of self-evaluation just too much. But some of the players at the weekend that Morris mentioned there, Mackin, Turbert, and even McPartland, to me, hold on, there's something different here. And they have obviously Gerald Dogue and Ryan and Merlin, etc., to come back in. They have the players to have a serious assault. I'm just not convinced they're maximising the talents that they have. I think they're too conservative, and so I know they probably change and a good 20-point win, but even the 20-point win should there have been more goals and that should etc. So if they can become more progressive, I think they do have the players to be serious later on in the summer as well. So look at next weekend. Yeah, Derry and Tyrone to win.
Yeah, Morris, how do you see them?
The same, yeah. I think Derry are so good at cancelling out your two main threats. We've talked previously about Fermanagh's reliance on the McGurn, Kelm axis. I was wondering, will they pull a rabbit and maybe start Quigley and try and split that? But they're so good at cancelling out your two. If we don't know what the stories of Christy Mackay, it sounds like he might actually be back. If he does, you could see him going straight to McGurn. Ethan Doherty might go to Ulster Kelm, and then you're reliant on what's around you. So I think Derry have the right matchups for that, and I think Tyrone will beat Monaghan as well.
Yeah, it's I boringly enough, I agree with both of those. I think Tyrone will have too much for Monaghan, and I do think Derry will beat Fermanagh. Although I do think both matches will be very competitive. I don't see there being a whole pile in it, and next week we'll be reviewing those matches and also be previewing what is an incredible bumper weekend of matches the following weekend, where all the remaining teams will essentially have been out in the championship by that point, and we'll see them. And later on, as we move through this, we should say for the first time ever in the history of the GAA, in the middle of May, all counties who field in the senior football championship, that is everybody with the exception of Kilkenny, will be out on the same weekend with Talchan and Sam Maguire matches, which is something very much to look forward to. Commiserations to Paddy and James on their losses at the weekend. As an Offaly man, winning the Leinster Championship match was just a great weekend for us, but I feel your pain. You
did your best to tip against them, though.
I didn't tip against them. I want that to be clear. There's been allegations. I never tip against Offaly. Actually, it's one of those interesting things when you're tipping or when you're talking about your own county. I think it is. I think judgment. You can try and be as balanced as you want and try and be fair, but just judgment, whether it's either fear or arrogance, depending on which way you're feeling at a particular time, I think it leaves it really difficult to do. Maurice?
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I obviously have a entirely objective as a journalist and don't have any alliances, so I'm able to pick without favour, but I feel your pain.
We're just happy you get through the weekend without fighting with a manager. It's thank you for joining us. Thanks to Larry for running this podcast, to Raf Rocca, to Jack Neville, to Adrian Russell, to Tony Lean, and to everyone at Examiner Sport. Thanks to Allianz for all their support with this podcast. A huge thanks to James Horan, as always, to Paddy Kelly for joining us, and to Maurice for joining us today. Bin Maternash Galore.
A grain of rice, a grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lads. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen, Victory.